The vampire counts march forth.
Hello and welcome to another Total War Warhammer guide. Today we are looking at two of the most important units in the Vampire Count army, and that is the Black Knights and the Hex Wraiths. The Black Knights also come in a second flavour, which is with lances and barding. We'll go through the differences between the units, then we'll have a quick look at them in battle and sort of discuss how you might use them. So first off is the Black Knights. Now, quick background is that the Vampire Count army, most of its infantry is terribly slow. Like, zombies are infuriatingly slow. So you need some decent units that are going to be at speed, that can get those flank charges, the rear charges off. And these are the units to do it. So these are the Black Knights. They're basically wights on horseback, sort of skeletal steeds. They are armoured and shielded, meaning they're going to take less damage from missile damage and close combat damage unless they're armour piercing. And they are anti-infantry. These are for charging down the big blocks of infantry. So they've got 80 armour, which is fantastic. They also have a leadership of 50. All undead are pretty low leadership. Speed of 76, which is just it's just amazing for vampire counts. Melee attack of 24, defense 26, weapon strength 38, and a decent charge bonus of 24. So they cause fear, as a lot of undead units do. They can hide in the forest, they're undead, so we know that they suffer from crumbling and eventually disintegration. That is, instead of routing from battle when they've lost numbers and their leadership is low, instead of running away, they basically start crumbling and taking more damage over time. So that has its good and bad effects, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Next up, we have the second flavour, which is with the lances and barding. So they don't have shields. They do have shields, don't they? I don't know. It just doesn't come up on there. They do have shields. That's a lie. And they are anti-infantry like before. But these are basically better for charging. And I prefer these, to be honest, because I think the whole use for my Black Knights in my army is to be charging in the flanks, in the rear, or chasing after missile infantry, artillery crews. And it's all about getting the charge off and then moving on to the next unit. So I much prefer the Black Knights with the lances. So as you can see, they are much highly armoured, because the barding, which is, if you don't know what barding is, basically horse armour, which helps protect them. So they've got 110 armour, which is fantastic. We'll flick between the two so we can see the differences. They're a tiny bit slower, but not enough to really make a difference. Same amount of attack, slightly less defense. Weapon strength is 42, which is a little bit higher, but the biggest difference, obviously, is that charge. 24 for normal, 58 for the lances. Very good. They have the same abilities, cause fear, crumbling, undead, all that good stuff there. Of the two, I definitely prefer the lances. Next up, we have the Hex Wraiths, which are the sort of ghostly cavalry. They are ethereal. They are armor-piercing because they use their big scythes, so they can do damage against heavily armoured troops. They are ethereal, meaning they take 75% less physical damage. They also have Vanguard Deployment, so they can actually deploy outside of your zone, so they can go and hide. If we look at this battle here, so our deployment is in the yellow, as you can see. The enemy deployment in the red, and anywhere outside this white line, we can deploy our Vanguard units. So we could sneak them off down this hillside here for a rear attack or something like that. So it's really valuable use in the undead army. There's not many units that have Vanguard. Is it the only one? Not sure. But the biggest, they all come in units of 45. So they also cause terror because they're ghosts. That's quite scary. So they don't have any armour, but that's okay because they're ethereal. They reduce 75% anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about that. 40 leadership as opposed to 50 of the normal skeletons, the normal Black Knights. They speed of 80, so they are the quickest of the three units. They also have melee attack of 24, similar sort of melee attack, but they do magic damage, and importantly, fire damage, which we'll talk about in a sec. Melee defense is not quite as good with 18. Weapon strength is 38. Not too bad, but remember they do have armor piercing. And a charge bonus of 20, which is not fantastic. But it'll do. It'll do. So, as we said, they cause physical resistance of 75%. Absolutely fantastic. They cause fear and terror. They have Vanguard Deployment, which you've been through, and they're undead. So there's no any other particular abilities. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to muck about and sort of send them into a fight. Just while we talk about them. So we're going to Vanguard are... They're going to be our spotters, basically, so we can see where the enemy is deploying. I'll put them in a group and we'll lock them. So, here we go. We're just going to move up. So the way you'd use these 3 units is slightly different. Firstly, we'll talk about the Hex Wraiths. Now, because they do magic damage, this is the big thing for me. Because they do magic damage, I am set, and they resist 75% of physical damage, I'm sending them against trolls. If the enemy has trolls, which... they have regeneration. Trolls have regeneration over time, but flaming damage does more damage to them and it stops their regeneration, which is just hugely important because trolls can stay in a fight for a long time because of that regeneration. So Hex Wraiths are going to go after those. Obviously, with the Hex Wraiths, you've got to steer clear of anything that does any weapons that do magical damage. There's certain units in other units in the game that do magical damage, but also like enemy wizards and stuff like that. A fireball, a well-placed fireball can wreck any units that are ethereal. So let's get these charged in. They are spearmen, so this is going to be tricky. Like I said, I'm not telling you how to play. You know, we're just messing about here. So we're going to just sort of cheeky let them charge. So the way I'd use the Black Knights is much like any cavalry. Like I said, I do prefer the lances to the normal cavalry, but they're both very good. So we're just going to, not the ideal method, but we're going to charge our lances into these spearmen and then just hit them immediately from the side. So like with any cavalry, you don't want to get them stuck into battle. You don't want them getting stuck like that. I'll leave these guys here and just say, look, this is not what you want to happen, because eventually, once they've hit their charge, they're going to start getting whittled down. You want to charge these units into the flanks of the enemy, into the rear of the enemy, get them to break, and then just move on to the next one. You don't want them just stuck in a combat, because they will eventually get clogged down. They're not the best fighters anyway. It's all about the charge, especially with those lances, which, like I said, I prefer much higher. So we managed with our rear guards and charges and everything to break these enemy units. We've actually crushed them. I like that the Lord is just sitting there like, yeah, whatever. Oh, hello, mate. Oh, sorry, did I trip you badly? So he's about to run off, I think, as well. So we pretty much murdered these. So as I said, out of the 2 Black Knights, I'd definitely go with the Lances, just because that gives it a much harder hitting power on the charge, because I don't want to be in combat long with these. I want to get my slow zombie skeleton units, Graveguard, get them up into the fight. Once they're fighting, have your cavalry on the flanks and charge them round. I would use these, in particular, the Lances and Barding, to use as a counter charge factor onto the flanks and to the rear of their main army force. Hooray, we won. I'd use the normal Black Knights, which are obviously a little bit cheaper, to send more. You can use them for the same thing, but they don't have that much impact. So I'd send these units against missile infantry, because with their swords and shields, they're a little bit protected against that because they're shielded. And also artillery crews, you know, that sort of thing. I think they're very useful against, because you don't need to be the best in combat to still break a unit of missile infantry. Now, handgunners, they're still going to run away. This poor bloke is getting swamped. Where is he? Hello? Hello? There he is. Right, there he is. Getting slaughtered. So the way I'd use the Hex Wraiths is, like I said, you can still use them in both those same situations. You can still chase down missile infantry, you can still go for the flank and rear charges, very effective at that. But they are better, in my opinion, because they're armor piercing. They're better at going against armored troops, but also going against those trolls with the magic damage. Anything where that magic damage can really help, I think will be absolutely superb. They'll just wreck through those units, and it's one of your best attacks versus those troll units. The troll units are big and scary, so they still do need some help a bit, but you can counter-charge with these guys, get them in combat, you know, one other unit just to sort of demoralise the troll unit, get them to break, because they do have very low leadership, so they will break quite quickly. But these will do a crap ton of damage to those guys and stop their regeneration. There you go. I hope you enjoyed our mini guide to the Hex Wraiths and the Black Knights. Please check out my other guides. I'm doing all the Vampire Count Army and everything else in the game. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.